Okay, so this video is going to review for you the key topics from our study of Gilded Age industrialization. So our learning goal for today was I understand how Gilded Age industrialization changed the United States. And our success criteria are I can describe a cause and effect of Gilded Age industrialization, and I can annotate documents to evaluate their point of view about Gilded Age industrialization. And just remember, so when we're talking about the Gilded Age, we're talking about the late 1800s time period in US history where we see three main changes. Immigration, people are coming over to America because of our jobs. Industrialization, which is the growth of big business, and urbanization, which we looked at last week, which is the growth of cities. So, in terms of talking about industrialization, there are really two main concepts you need to understand from this lesson. And the first is the impact of new inventions. One of the key inventions was the use of electricity. And so, electricity helps to power communication technologies like first the telegraph and later on the telephone. Factory machines can now run on electricity, which increases the productivity of factories. And then the simple light bulb uses electricity, which revolutionizes how our factories operate in the United States because now factories could stay open 24 hours a day, have multiple shifts for workers because they didn't have to close the factory once the sun went down. The second key invention is the Bessemer process, which creates better steel at a faster rate. This is how we see Andrew Carnegie make his fortune because he converts his steel mills to the Bessemer process, which makes that better steel. The steel also helps create the modern American city that we saw in a couple of pictures from last week, where we're starting to see the growth of skyscrapers. We're starting to see bridges like the Brooklyn Bridge, and even the Transcontinental Railroad that we looked at a couple of weeks ago benefits from this new use of steel. It makes better, cheaper, faster steel, which makes it to where we can construct new things that aren't going to be super heavy and kind of unrealistic. Okay, and then the second concept you need to understand is this idea of robber barons or captains of industry. And robber barons are people who exploit or take advantage of their workers and other business owners. Captains of industry is a term used to describe these businessmen who were really smart and came up with really cool new ideas and created the modern American business that we know today. So I mentioned earlier Andrew Carnegie, who was the robber baron or captain of industry for the steel industry. He did not pay his workers a lot of money, and they had very bad working conditions. But he tries to argue in his book, The Gospel of Wealth, that it benefits society more, him giving money to charity, than if he had paid his workers a living wage. Another robber baron or captain of industry that you need to be familiar with is John D. Rockefeller. And Rockefeller is associated with the oil industry, specifically Standard Oil. And Standard Oil was a monopoly, which means that it controls the majority of one industry, in that case, the oil industry. Standard Oil at its height and John D. Rockefeller at his height owned more than 90% of the oil industry. But he also tries to argue that he's a good person because he gives money to universities. Okay, so hopefully this gave you a quick review of the key concepts from today's lesson. Go ahead and move on to the questions.